everybody. Welcome to The World This Week. From the Iran deal to the death of a music legend. These are some of the stories that define the world this week.
Economic and financial sanctions related to Iran's nuclear program are lifted.
Thank you very much.
It was a mistake. That was our fault, and we apologize.
UN teams have witnessed the scenes that haunt the soul.
If you doubt America's commitment, or mine, to see that justice is done, just ask Osama bin Laden.
And with me this week are Alon Pinkas and Tal Shalev. Happy to have you here. Alon, cause for a celebration?
What, Iran? Mm-hmm. No, I think we should assess this in 4 to 5 years. Obviously, it's an agreement that's been signed, negotiated, signed, implemented fully at this point. Iran's compliance and adherence will be tested in time, not via speeches or press conferences. But in terms of curbing the Iranian nuclear program, which was the prime objective of this entire move or movement in the last 2 to 3 years, it is a cause for celebration because it has been curbed.
Well, clearly, Tal, there's one person in Jerusalem who's not celebrating.
Oh yes, Netanyahu is not admitting fail, but it is clear that this is the case. The deal is a fait accompli, and Iran is on its way to becoming a member of the family of nations again. And Netanyahu is basically now moving forward, looking forward, and for the White House, managing the aftermath of this could be a challenge because many people, including Netanyahu, GOP candidates, are basically waiting for the White House just to make a misstep in any day, and they are waiting just to hold Obama accountable for any mistake.
Even
or
Hillary
any.
Clinton said that she is for more sanctions after the ballistic missile tests.
Well, definitely Hillary Clinton has to prepare herself for the fact that this deal might not be such a success as the Obama administration is trying to portray it now. And Netanyahu basically, though, will be waiting for the Republican president, if he will be elected, to shred up the agreement. The only problem with that is that campaign promises are usually doomed to be violated and not to be filled.
Right. Let's watch President Obama in his State of the Union address.
Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction. Well, so is all the rhetoric you hear about our enemies getting stronger and America getting weaker. Let me tell you something. The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth, period.
Alon is clearly fighting for his legacy already, right? And it's going to be a tough war against the other spins of the Republicans.
I beg to differ. I don't think he's fighting for any legacy. I think the legacy is there. It's mostly domestic rather than foreign. I think the legacy speaks for itself. Obviously, legacy can only be intelligently assessed 5 or 10 or 15 years later. I mean, George Bush's legacy or Bill Clinton's legacy are still a story in the making. Naturally, so will Obama's. But look, you look at his domestic achievements. 50 states allow homosexual marriage. 14 million new jobs. Wall Street has recuperated since 2008. The auto industry has been resuscitated beyond belief. Obamacare has been passed. None of these can be taken back by the or undone by the Republicans.
Wait and see.
No. None of these. In fact, none of the Republican candidates even wants to undo President Obama. That includes, by the way, apropos our previous segment, that includes the Iran deal. If you take GOP candidates by their word, the first day of their presidency is going to take 5 or 6 years because they will undo Obamacare. They will shred, as Tal said, the Iranian. They won't have time for lunch. This is nonsense. All of his achievements you like them or not, are there to stay.
But internationally, it's a different story.
Definitely. The State of the Union, in many ways, I think, was a microcosm of the whole presidency of Obama. He was very good in domestic policy, and in foreign policy, not as spot on. And we hear it also in the speech. He doesn't even mention the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
That's because it was an optimistic speech.
It was an optimistic speech. On his first State of the Union, Obama pledged to end the war in Iraq, and he might be passing on a different war to his successor. He didn't mention the Afghan war. He had only one very short reference to Iran, which was basically short and sweet, saying that leadership means I made a deal so we don't have to go to war. And I think that his foreign policy will, as I agree with Alon, that the legacy will be determined only years from now. But in foreign policy, the prospects for a good overall rating are much less optimistic.
Right. Alon Pinkas, Tansulev, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about the campaign. Matthew Sheffield is editor-in-chief of Bold. You can find it online for news and political coverage. Thank you for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thanks. Good to be here.
2 weeks to Iowa. Trump looks like the debate winner again. Can Ted Cruz pull a win in Iowa?
It's definitely possible that he could. Because I agree with you that Trump was the strongest debater last night. He didn't hurt himself at the very least. But Cruz has a very good ground game in Iowa. He's strong with all these far-right Christian pastors who want to basically make America a Christian-only country. So he has a good chance there, and the polling shows that.
Let's watch the birth and citizen argument that Trump attempted on Cruz.
My friend Donald said that he had had his lawyers look at this from every which way, and there was no issue there. There was nothing to this birther issue. Now, since September, the Constitution hasn't changed. But the poll numbers have.
The fact is, there's a big overhang. There's a big question mark on your head. And you can't do that to the party.
Matthew, is this going to hurt Cruz?
I think it is a little bit. The fact is, that people are talking about it now, and that in itself hurts him because if you do take a very literal reading of the American Constitution, Ted Cruz probably is not qualified to be the president of the United States. But on the other hand, you've got the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which was added later, which said that, referring to people who were born in the U.S., that they were citizens, but it didn't clarify to the status of people, who were born of children, born of Americans abroad, right, what their status was with respect to the presidency.
Now, the GOP establishment is freaking out. Can they do anything to stop either Trump or Cruz at this stage?
That's kind of been the story that people have missed a lot in this presidential cycle, is that the Republican power structure, yes, they don't like Cruz and they don't like Trump, but on the other hand, these guys are very poor at their jobs, and you can see, how terribly that they did in the past several, presidential cycles against Obama. They're all divided among themselves, and they've divided their candidates up among themselves. Instead of trying to put pressure on, John Kasich or whoever, don't enter the race, you're going to split up our votes. They didn't do that, and so now they're in the position where the more far-right factions had been in the previous Republican presidential cycles.
Mm. The Trump phenomena, people, keep discounting him. Could he really end up in the White House?
I don't think he has a good chance to win in the general election, but he does actually have a pretty good chance at getting the Republican nomination. Basically, Donald Trump has turned the Republican and conservative establishments campaign tactic against them, and they're very upset that he's managed to do that. But it's not a good strategy for the general.
Matthew Sheffield in Washington, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Some terrible incidents in Germany where dozens of women were sexually attacked in a series of events since New Year's Eve, mainly on the streets of Cologne, but not only. With us from Berlin is journalist Konstantin Schreiber. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
You have an extensive Arabic background. You speak some Arabic. You spent some time in Syria. How would you describe what has been happening in Cologne and elsewhere?
I think what happened in Cologne is a turning point in what we describe the welcome politics or policies of our Chancellor Angela Merkel towards refugees, particularly from Syria. We still don't know exactly what happened in Cologne, if it was some sort of organized crime that happened there or some kind of spontaneous sexual harassment that happened there on New Year's Eve in Cologne, but the public outrage is there, and many people are now questioning if it's the right path to follow to welcome millions of Syrian or Arabic refugees that flee their home countries to Germany, and if it's easy to provide them with shelter, to provide them with work, to provide them with all necessary goods that they need for their daily life for a long-term period of time here in Germany.
Many German women, and not only women, complained that the authorities were slow and hesitant to react. Why?
I think the authorities are not exactly very well equipped when it comes to the sort of crime that we haven't seen in this country before. I think there are other countries in Europe and beyond that have more, I don't want to call it expertise, but that have a longer, that have seen some sort of crime on this scale for a longer period of time, so that the authorities and also the policies are more prone to respond to that sort of thing in a better way they see fit than it happens in Germany. So I think everyone was just very surprised, and particularly the police in Cologne wasn't staffed well enough, wasn't equipped well enough to react at a better response rate, and particularly that they didn't expect something like that to happen on New Year's Eve was probably a failure from the side of the authorities that haven't been planning and to respond to an incident like this fast enough and in a way that's good enough.
Was there any reluctance because they were afraid of a political backlash, especially in light of the Chancellor's policies of welcoming refugees to Germany?
This is now a matter of discussion in Germany, because we hear from the police in Germany and also from high-level authorities that they don't call, but they don't follow crime from the side of refugees because they are afraid that the public outrage would be huge. So they don't call persons who are committing crimes, who are refugees, who are coming from abroad. They don't call them refugees, but they call them people without any permanent residence. So they could be anyone, basically. They could be homeless people. They could be refugees. They could be anyone. So apparently, authorities have been using this term, people without permanent residence, to describe refugees or to describe foreigners who are committing crimes in Germany, in order to avoid public discussion about if it's the right way the Chancellor and the governing party is dealing with the refugee crisis in Germany.
So to this date, they don't know or don't want to name who was it there?
In the case of Cologne, they did issue a statement that provided the nationalities of those who they could identify who were involved in the crime in Cologne. Because the public pressure was high, they actually issued that kind of statement. But in general, there have been many cases in recent weeks where, or in which the authorities didn't give any details about where the people or where people committing certain crimes actually came from.
Can this, Konstantin, change the whole attitude towards the Syrian refugees and others in Germany?
it has already changed the attitude of many Germans towards the refugee crisis or towards refugees. And what we now see is that Chancellor Merkel seems to be fighting for her office. Many people are questioning if she will really stay in office until the end of her term, because the pressure from her own party is high and the pressure from the public opinion is high. So it seems like either she has to change her policies towards refugees, or she will probably get into deep trouble with her own party and with the public opinion. So the attitude of, I think, the majority of Germans has already changed away from we welcome refugees to how can we handle that, and to, well, we already welcome enough refugees, so we have to stop open our doors to more people coming from Syria to our country.
Mm-hmm. Konstantin Schreiber in Berlin, I thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.